Welcome back everyone, hope you're doing well. In this lesson we are going to be taking our first look at products. Some may say they're the literal bread and butter of a BPOS database. Anyway, while we will have a couple product related lessons back to back here, and then we will revisit products again throughout the remainder of this course, this lesson should serve as our introduction and overview. But that's not to say that we won't be going over some very important concepts and settings today, because we certainly will be. That is sort of the idea behind our Product Maintenance 101 lesson. But before we do get into any product settings at all, we'll first need to start building out our product list, or at least a little bit. But after we add a few product groups, we'll add a product to the list, to a group, and we'll begin going through the settings, which you'll see when we get to them, and you've probably come to expect by now, are split out into a tab structure. The tabs, though, are even more significant for products, and that is due to a division between settings that sit at the global level for products and settings that sit at the store level for products. But we'll chat more about that when we get there. As we jump to back office though, maybe it's unclear what I'm talking about when we're referring to products. Are these items that the business is purchasing, selling, using? The answer is all of the above. So products in BPOS and what will need to be added to the database via the product list can really be any number of items that the business purchases and brings into a store and or will be selling to customers. Now there's a lot of different types of products that we'll chat more about in a bit, and certainly more in other lessons later on in this course. But the important thing to consider now while we're covering our bases is that for the most part, products in the product list could be either things that are purchased to then be sold as is to customers. So think of things like bottled beer. They could be items that are purchased to then be used as ingredients of products that will be sold to customers. So think of something like slices of tomato, or tomato that's going to be sliced to put onto a cheeseburger or something like that. Products could be items that are not purchased but are simply made from products that are purchased. And we'll get more into detail with that when we talk about stocked versus non-stocked products later in this lesson, and then when we look at a concept called manufactured products, but that'll be towards the end of the course. Of course, we could also add products to the product list that will be sold to customers that do not have any ingredients and may be more of an intangible service rather than a tangible physical product, but those types of things can be added to the product list as well. And the last major kind of product that we could have would be things that the business purchases simply to use internally that would never be sold to customers or used as an ingredient of something that would be sold to customers. Anyway, as I said, we'll chat more about those types of things, what we call product modes and stock modes throughout this course, but just wanted to mention those for now, the different types of products that we can add. For now though, let's take a look at the product list itself, which is going to be found in our maintenance menu, which I already have open here. Of course, provided that the operator who's logged in has privileges enabled to be able to access and maintain the product list. Of course, our last lesson was on operators. Just a quick sidebar on the operator privileges that are related to products though. If I open an operator record, I'll just open anyone here if I can find an operator in a list. There we go. So here on the maintenance tab, we've got a whole long list of product flags that control everything at a very granular level, from whether or not an operator can even view the product list and then edit or create products, to if they can maintain prices, sizes, and barcodes. So just keep these types of things in mind. Again, not every operator should be able to access the product list, and even those who can access the product list itself, we may want some operators to only be able to do certain things within the product list or be restricted from maintaining specific product settings. Anyway, if we head back to the product list, it is actually at the top of the maintenance menu here, and clicking that is going to open our product list for us. Let me just close the operator list. So by default, when a database is created, it will contain a handful of product groups and a couple products. I will turn on the full tree here. Yes, I know, shocking that we're encountering this tree structure yet again, but get used to it. As I've mentioned, this concept is used throughout back office, and it makes our lists quite customizable and easy to use, and then easy to navigate once they've been set up and configured. So for the default product groups, we do have, aside from our base product group, we've got products for sale with a subgroup underneath that called sample products, and that has got a sample product in it called product 1. And then we've got another parent group here called system product with a handling fee product in it. We'll get to that another time, or actually I believe that's been mentioned already in the system setup 101 lesson, where we showed the handling fee product in global maintenance. Anyway, so of course, as with the operator list, this list is completely customizable, so we can edit and rename these product groups, but we'll just leave these ones for now, because before we do make any changes, I just want to revisit a concept that we discussed in the System Setup 101 lesson, which is loosely structuring the product list based on the system's sorts and types that we defined in global settings. So if we quickly peek back at those global settings, and I'll point out again where that handling fee product that I referenced a second ago is. That's where we set that here. But over to the sorts and types tab, obviously you've probably set up your sorts and types differently than I've done here. Again, something that's going to be specific to your organization, but I basically just broke these up for the type groups and sort groups by food, beverage, and some miscellaneous things, and then some further breakdown for categorization into types of food and beverage and miscellaneous things here. And the product sorts are a bit reminiscent of some different courses and so on. Since our sorts and types are defined in this manner, it might make sense to then structure the product list in this database, maybe first into food, beverage, retail, etc., and then some subgroups similar to either the types or sorts. So if I just save that and we'll head back to our product list, what I might do first is add another parent group, actually that I'll call products not for sale. So one product group will contain a mix of both stocked and non-stocked products that are going to be sold to customers, and the other will contain stocked products and a couple other stock modes that we'll cover another day, but all the products that will not be sold to customers and will just be either ingredients of products that are sold to customers or products that are just used internally. But anyway, to add our other parent group, I'll need to first highlight the base product group, and then I can either right click and add a group under, or with that highlighted I can select the button from the top to add a new group. Just need to add the name. So again, I'll call this one products not for sale. Cool, there we go. Now another thing I should mention now is that, as with the operator list, here in the product list we can only have products in the bottommost branches or the lowest groups. Point being that a bit of planning at the start, so prior to adding some individual products, will make things easier when we then build out the product list from there. Now, as with operators, we can move products from one group to another after we have the products themselves added, and I'll show you how to do that in a bit. But if we do make a mistake and we need to move maybe dozens of products or something like that, it's obviously not ideal, so a bit of planning beforehand can go a long way. Now we'll keep things pretty simple for today. We'll add some subgroups under our products for sale, again somewhat based on the sorts and types that are defined in this database that we just saw. So I'll add, let's go with food. I'll add one called beverage, and I'll add one called retail. And I'll add some subgroups to these too. So we'll just build out some of the beverage groups for now. I won't make you sit through me building out an entire product list. I think you get the gist of it, of how we can add groups to this, but I'll just add a couple subgroups here. There we go. We've got our beverage group and then subgroups beneath that: cocktails, draft beer and cider, packaged beer and cider, spirits, and wine. Now we could, of course, branch further out with additional subgroups and sub-subgroups and sub-sub-subgroups, and that is certainly something to consider before you begin adding individual products. So for example, I could add some subgroups under spirits for different varieties of alcohol. Maybe I want to add vodka, whiskey, gin, tequila, so forth. I can do that. Whoops, if I can spell. Vodka, whiskey. If you want to spell whiskey with a EY or a Y, that's up to you. I think with just the Y it reads as whiskey. I think whiskey should have the E in the end, but that's a debate for another day. Anyway, we'll add gin and tequila. Cool. And maybe we could have subgroups under those. Maybe we have different tiers for subgroups for vodka, for house vodka, mid vodka, premium vodka, etc. And perhaps we could go further than that. Again, it is completely customizable, up to you how you'd like to do that. We could have layers of subgroups for the beer and cider groups. So those could be based on a number of factors, but again, I'll leave those alone. I'll leave that up to you. And we will just add what we'll do is we'll add a draft beer to our draft beer and cider group. Now there's a couple different ways that we can do that we can add a product. Now would be a good time to explain that whenever we're adding a new product to the product list, we have to, there's no way around it, we must copy an existing product from the database. That is one of the reasons that each database is created with a sample product. That sample product will need to be copied to create our first product. When we create a new product and copy an existing one, yes, it will copy a majority of the product settings, which may need to be changed initially. So let's say, for example, we're adding a bunch of vodka products, and then copy one to create our first packaged beer product. We will need to change the stock settings and sizes and so forth. But once we've done that for one packaged beer, we can copy that packaged beer to create other packaged beers, and probably the packaged ciders too, provided that they have the same pack sizes and things like that. Now, the product settings that are not ever copied, by the way, are going to be, and we'll see these in a second, product number, barcodes are never copied, recipes are not copied, ingredients are not copied, comments, and supplier product codes. Basically, the things that should be unique to each product are never going to be copied. But anyhow, for our draft beer, we can either find the product that we want to copy. So again, right now, we only have the one that we could copy, which is the default sample product 1. And then we could right click on that and copy highlighted product as new product. But I will just cancel that for now. Alternatively, we can highlight the product group where we want to add the product. So I'll highlight that first, and then select the Add New Product button from the top. And in this workflow, we then are prompted to choose the product to copy anyway. So whichever workflow you'd like to do is up to you. We'll then just need to find the product to copy and select that. But here we are, we're finally seeing our product settings. And while there are not as many settings here as what we'll have for, say, operators or venue maintenance, there's still quite a bit here. We won't be covering all of these settings in this lesson, just some of the more basic and important ones we'll get to today, and others we'll get to throughout upcoming lessons. For example, we'll cover these stock settings in detail in additional stock control lessons, but we will mention them today. One of the things that I will point out for now, though, is something that I had alluded to at the start about some product settings that sit at the global level and others that are at the store level. So everything in the header section at the top here can be considered to be at the global level, meaning that these settings will apply to this product record in all locations of the organization. For example, we can't have this product be one product mode in one store and a different product mode in another store. It will just always need to be a normal product if it's a normal product. And the same goes for everything on this product settings tab. These configurations will stay with the product everywhere, although there are certain settings that can be overridden at the store level if we'd like to, but we'll get to those another time. Speaking of the store level, everything on this store/pricing settings tab are considered to be at the store level, or what are often referred to as product store settings. Sometimes that's referred to as prod store settings, so PROD STORE, prod store or product store settings. We'll come back to this tab shortly and explain it a bit more detailed. But for each store that this product exists in, or that this product is going to be stocked and or sold in, we can have different settings configured on this tab for each store. But we'll come back to that momentarily. For now, back to the product settings tab. Actually, we'll start with the header section. So the name is just that. It's the name of the product that is going to show on SmartPOS workstations and in most reports. The name is also the only mandatory field that needs to be completed for a product to be saved. So let's call our draft beer BPOS Pale Ale. So then why do we have a field below that called full name? Well, the name field here can only be 30 characters maximum, whereas the full name can be double that, up to 60 characters maximum. So we could enter something in the full name field like BPOS Breweries POS Pale Ale Draft Keg or something like that if we wanted to. There we go, much longer, potentially full name for this product. It's basically an alternate name that can then optionally appear on printouts, but we'll cover printing in another lesson. If we wanted to have the full name print on receipts and to remote printing rather than the regular name, we could do that. We can also optionally, in this what's a blank space now, we could have what's called a second language name show here. So if I just save this product for now and we head back to our global settings again, on the main tab is where we have this field called second language name. And if I enter some text in there, maybe I'll just call it Spanish, and I save that, I will need to log out and back in and head back to that product record, or a product record. We'll go to our product record for BPOS Pale Ale. We will now have a field here called Spanish name. Now, the use case for this would be if, let's say, the back of house staff predominantly speak another language, Spanish for example. We could have the second language name for products with the product records, so save the Spanish names with the records, and then have those names print on back of house remote printed dockets. So when we get to printing, I'll show you how we can choose which one of these names can be printed. So that's something that we could do. That's the use case for having the second language name as a field that we can add here. Okay, the next setting that we'll look at now, although only briefly, is the product mode. So the one that's selected now, I mentioned earlier, is a normal product. It is The only one that we'll be using in this lesson or looking at in this lesson. However, in the next lesson, we will take a look at the rest of these product modes and we'll explain them all in more detail. For now though, what I will say is that a normal product is simply the standard default product mode that we want to use for products that are going to be sold or used by the organization. Next to that, we've got the group dropdown, which is the same idea as what we saw in the Operators 101 lesson. We can use this to move a product to a different product group if we'd like to. And a few other similarities from operator records. We have the date and time that the record was created. We have an inactive flag again, and we have the ability to add a product image or a product logo could be added here. As with operator records and many other database records, and I'll mention this time and time again when we see this concept, products cannot be deleted once they've been created. They can only be made inactive. That is for historical sales and stock reporting purposes and to avoid losing any data or potentially having some data be corrupted. When a product is made inactive, my operator privileges do not allow me to make a product inactive, but it would take on that salmon color that we've seen in some other lessons. It'll be similar. It might be exactly this salmon color that's here that shows that this is missing on our tills. And when a product is made inactive, it will not appear on till screens. That will prevent it from being sold. Also want to point out that since I saved the product when we exited a minute ago to go to the global settings, that this product has now had its product ID assigned to it, which we can see next to the product name at the top of the window. It's number 21. This is simply the product record's unique ID that will always stay attached to the record, regardless of if we change the product name or make other changes to it or something like that. In saying that, I should add, it is very strongly advised against ever reusing a product record if a product goes out of stock or is no longer being sold or whatever the case may be. The reason being that all the historical sales and stock data will still be attached to the product record via its product ID. So let's say, for example, this BPOS Pale Ale stops being brewed from our brewery and it's been replaced in the brewery's lineup with a new lager or something. If we were to just change the product name and maybe a few other settings here on the product record to convert it to this new product, all the historical data that exists for the Pale Ale is still there, but because we've changed the product name, someone who runs some reports, some historical reports, is going to look at that data and think that it belongs to the lager, even though it actually belongs to the Pale Ale. So the correct course of action in a scenario like that is to just make the Pale Ale inactive and create a new product record for the new product. Moving on, and we will get to this till key map status in an upcoming lesson, by the way, how this is missing on two tills. For now, we'll head down to the product settings tab itself. Cool. The first thing I should point out is that while a majority of these settings are available for all product modes and stock modes are here, and we'll get to those in a bit. Some of the settings on this tab will change dynamically depending on which of these is selected. So you can see some of these settings are going to go away as we change the product mode there, and some of them are going to change as well if the stock mode is changed, but we'll get to those things in time. Also, some of the settings that remain for certain product modes and stock modes are not necessarily required or applicable, even though they are still there. They just stay on the form regardless, and I'll point out examples when the time comes, but anyway, we'll stick with our 101 topics for this lesson. I won't get ahead of myself. So first on this tab to go over today is going to be the base size, which is just going to be the product's base volume, weight, or size. So the drop down here offers a range of corresponding units that we might need. For example, This draft beer that we purchase in kegs, I think the standard size keg is 50 liters or 50,000 mils. That will tie directly into the store/pricing settings that we'll come to in a few minutes, where we can set how much will then sell for specific sizes of the product. So in this case, it might be pints or schooners or whatever they're called in your region, and they would be fractions of this base size of this 50,000 mils. So if a product is only ever going to be sold in whole units, so example would be bottled beer instead of draft beer, this base size field is optional. That's as long as the bottles are only being sold as is, as whole units, not being sold in 50 ml portions or something like that. But again, if a product is only ever going to be sold in whole units, this is optional, or it can be left as one item. But for any products that are going to be sold as portions less than a whole unit, like our draft beer would be, this does need to be set correctly, as well as the sizes on the next tab. That way, when a product is sold, the correct units and amount of the product are being deducted from stock. But anyway, we'll get more into that when we get to our stock control lessons. For now, just understand that this is optional for products that are going to be sold as is, but for products that are going to be portioned out when they're sold, this does need to be set accurately to reflect the product's base size. Okay, next is the cost tax, which can either be set to taxed or tax-free. Since this is the cost tax setting, it only affects the calculated cost price when purchasing and receiving the product, not the sales tax when the product is sold. That's the retail tax. That'll be on the next tab. This is the cost tax. That brings us then to this little boxed in section labeled stock settings. As I said, we will cover this in much greater detail over upcoming stock control lessons. But now we'll get into something that I touched on earlier, which is the difference between stocked and non-stocked products. So stocked products, like our draft beer here, which we've got the correct stock mode selected for, is going to include products that are going to be purchased and then stocked in a store. They may then be sold directly to customers as is, or as a portion of how they've been purchased, or they may become an ingredient of a product that's going to be sold to customers. So a different example than I used earlier could be maybe slices of cheese that are going to be used on burgers or sandwiches. So the cheese itself may never be sold directly to customers, but it will be used as an ingredient of those products that are going to be sold to customers. In that example, those burgers and sandwiches would be non-stocked products, meaning that they are not stocked in any stores in the venue. They technically don't exist until they're sold, and when they're sold, all of their ingredients, the stocked products that are used to make a burger or a sandwich or whatever the non-stocked product is, all of its ingredient stocked products are going to be deducted from stock, and the non-stocked product, the cheeseburger maybe, we'll roll with that example, is going to be made and served to the customer. So at no point does the cheeseburger itself exist as stock in the store, only its ingredients exist as stock in the store, which are the stocked products. Now you may have noticed that when I changed the stock mode, a bunch of the settings in this section disappeared because they just aren't relevant for non-stocked products. But if I change that back to stocked, which I do need to do for this draft beer, we've got what are called our reordering settings. So these define how the product is going to be purchased from suppliers, and it needs to be the same for all stores, which is why this setting sits here at the global level on this tab. Probably not a great example for the draft beer because it would just be purchased by the keg and would be configured as something like just 1 unit per case. And these fields are just used to define the name of the case. So in this example, we would just call it 1 keg. But yeah, if we were setting up maybe bottled wine that's purchased in, 6 bottles per case or something like that, we could have 6 entered there, and we could just define the case as a case. It may be something like eggs that are purchased at 144, maybe 12 dozen eggs per carton. And that way, when we are populating our purchase orders, we'll be able to order either by the each or by, in this case, the carton. But I think you get the idea. Just however the product is purchased from suppliers and brought into the venue's stores is how these reordering settings should be set up. But that'll be it in this section for today. As I said, we'll return here and cover more of these settings and some different examples of these in some upcoming lessons when we get to stock control and multi-store setup lessons. Moving down to these recipe and comment text boxes, both of these are just open text fields that we can enter text into. So we could enter some information about the product that can then be referenced both here in back office and from SmartPause. From SmartPause, it can be retrieved and printed out if needed. For an example, for the recipe could be a cocktail that maybe isn't ordered very often, so bartenders can look up the recipe from the till and be able to either view that from the till, or also they could print it. And maybe in the comment section, we could have some fun facts about the drink, give the bartenders a bit of the drink's history or something like that to chat about with the customer. Cool. Over on the other side of this tab, we have a series of buttons at the top. The barcodes option can be used to maintain the product's barcodes if it has one or more that are used. Of course, provided that the operator has the privilege flags enabled to be able to access and maintain them. But some fairly intuitive options here. Condiments we will cover in the next lesson, but this can be used for more than just adding ketchup and mustard options to burgers, but we'll cover those in the next lesson. And then ingredients. We cannot add ingredients to stocked products. If I just temporarily change this stock mode to non-stocked, I can open the ingredients option there. Try that again. So we'll pretend that we've built out a bunch of stocked products in our database already, and now we're adding our non-stocked menu item products like our burgers. And instead of this being BPOS Pale Ale, we are configuring our BPOS Bacon Cheeseburger. So what we would put into this ingredients list then would be to define and configure all of the individual ingredients and their portions that go into making the non-stocked product. So our bacon cheeseburger, if we'll use that as an example. So we'd be able to say 1 burger bun, 1 burger patty, 1 slice of cheese, 2 slices of bacon, 50 grams of tomato, so on and so forth. Whichever ingredients, whichever stocked product ingredients from the database are being used to make the non-stocked product is what we're going to put in here. We'll revisit this in another lesson, but the ingredients would need to be set up accurately so that each time a bacon cheeseburger is sold, the correct amount of ingredient products are deducted from the system stock levels. And then once we've got product costs in the system too, we can actually use this as a tool to help cost out and develop menu items, because we'll be able to see the cost in here, and as we change the quantities of the ingredients, we'll be able to see how much each of the non-stocked products is going to cost using those ingredients. Anyway, for now, I'll just change this back to stocked. Probably change this to just 1 keg. Cool. Alright, most of the rest of these settings we will come to over time, but the others that I do want to point out for today while we're here on this tab are the product type and the product sort, which are how we can, these drop downs are how we can define these and set these for each product. So for example, we'd probably want to set this beer's product type as draft beer and cider, or if I've got it in here as So here's an example of a product type that I realized I didn't add and I need to add it now. So what I'll do is I'll just save this as is, and we will come back to our global settings, sorts and types, and I will add another product type, and I will call it, there we go, and I'll change the type group for that to other beverage. Now if we go back to our product list, I can set that up correctly as it should be. So then the product type for that will be bulk alcohol, and we'll change the product sort to cold beverages. Okay, that way sales of this product will add to the report totals for their sorts and types and their respective sort groups and type groups as well for products. And as mentioned when we went through the sorts and types configurations, there's a number of other areas in the system that will utilize products defined sorts and types, such as for product profiles and remote printing and marketing and promotions. Cool. We will skip down to these flags, and I'll explain a couple of them while we're in this lesson. So starting with the daily special, by setting this for a product, we will make it so that the product can easily have its name and price adjusted, changed in SmartPOS using a till function called set daily specials. The use case for that would be maybe we have a product record in the system that's just called Chef's Burger by default, and maybe it's priced at $10 by default. But we would have this flag turned on for that product so that maybe whenever we have a new Chef's Burger, let's say a barbecue beef burger for a day or two, and that's at $12, and then a blue cheeseburger for $13 the next day or something like that, we can update those on the fly from SmartPOS and have those print out and priced appropriately. We just need to have this flag called daily special on. The other flag we'll look at today is the oversell warning. If this is turned on for a product, then in SmartPOS we'll display a warning when its quantity reaches a level that's been configured in store settings to trigger if the quantity is getting low. If I save this for a second and we head back to store settings, we would have gone over this in the System Setup 101 lesson. On to, oh, my mistake, it's not a store level setting, it is a venue level setting. The warning quantity right here. So we could set that at the venue level. When the quantity of a product gets below that level or to that level, if we have the oversell warning flag for the product turned on, in SmartPOS we'll be notified of that. We can manually set the quantity right from SmartPOS as well using a till function called set oversell quantity. So if we do need to set the quantity for a non-stocked product, we can do that from the till. Okay, let's move on to the store/pricing settings tab and get this lesson wrapped up. So remember that where this tab differs from the product settings tab is that these product settings apply to the product no matter which store it's in, whereas these configurations can change from one store to another, which we refer to as our prod store settings, again short for product store settings. I know we haven't really discussed the concept of a multi-store venue yet, and we do have a lesson coming up that will cover that concept in detail, but for now I'll just use a simple example. Let's say that we've got a semi-large venue, and it's got a couple different revenue centers in it, maybe 2 separate and distinct restaurants with their own kitchens and dining rooms, and then maybe 1 indoor bar and 1 outdoor bar. So those could all be set up in this system as separate stores that hold their own stock. I've mentioned this previously as well, and I'm sure I'll mention it again in this course, but stock is held at the store level, not the venue level. So each of those 4 separate revenue centers, separate stores, could have their own stock. Again, 2 restaurants, 2 separate bars within the one venue. We might also have a 5th store in the system and in the venue, which is a stocking store. That would be something like an internal warehouse of sorts that excess product can be stocked in and then distributed to the restaurants and bars as needed from that stocking store. So in this example then, we've got 5 stores in total in the venue. We've got 2 restaurants, 2 bars, and 1 stocking store. Now, since each store has its own stock and its own quantities of products, they can all have separate stocking quantities. That's where these min, max, and restock quantities come in, but we'll explain more on those in our stock control lessons. And each store in the venue that sells the product, so the bars and the restaurants obviously, can have different prices for their sizes configured for the same product if necessary. Now, we do need to have the same sizes from one store to another, but those sizes could have different prices. So for example, maybe this draft beer is sold in one of the restaurants in a 2-liter pitcher for, I don't know, I'll just throw out a number here, $15. But in the other restaurant and maybe the other bars, that same 2-liter pitcher of BPOS Pale Ale is sold for $10 or something like that. Or maybe there's some difference between maybe one of the if we've got an outdoor bar and an indoor bar, maybe they both have separate different pricing for each product. So we can control that sort of thing from this tab, along with a few other settings that we'll run through. Now, to make sure that we are even configuring the correct prod store settings, we will first need to check that the correct store has been selected from this store dropdown. If the organization has multiple stores, which we don't here, but using this store button is how we can actually add product to other stores. Since we only have the one store at the moment, we can't actually use this to do anything. Well, we could delete this store and then we could add it back in, but it's the only store we've got. But you can still see the options here to be able to maintain a product stores, and we'll be able to also see if the product has any quantity on hand or cost on hand associated with that quantity. We'd be able to see that here for each of the stores. So if we had our 5 stores here, we'd be able to see that for each one. Well, once we have ensured that we've got the correct store selected, we can then continue setting up all of our configuration options here. So the retail tax, this is converse to the cost tax option on this tab, which again is at the global level for products. And here, this is to specify the when the retail price of, or whether the retail price of the product in this store is going to include tax or not. All right, the rest of the configuration options in this top portion we will save for their related lessons. So we'll skip down to this box below where we can set up all the sizing and pricing again for the selected store. So first things first, we'll keep it simple to get started. Each product can have, you can see, up to 10 different sizes defined with names, quantities of units, and prices. So the quantities and units can be set as a certain number of items, or by using standard units of measure such as mils, grams. Just keep in mind that whichever is being used needs to relate back to this base size on the product settings tab. So if we've got this set up as mils, we're going to want these sizes set up as mils also. That way we can set the sizes up to be portions of that. So I might have these measurements wrong, or I'll just sort of make them up here, but maybe we've got a size called, we'll call it a jug, and we can call it whatever we'd like. And I'll say the quantity is going to be 1000 mils. And then maybe we've got a second size for size 2, we'll call that a pint, and we'll say that's 500 mils. And then for size 3, maybe we've got something called a schooner, and that's 300 mils. No idea if those are the correct quantities of units for those, but we'll just roll with that. So if a size is configured as one item, so let's say we do have this just as one item, that will be equal to a base size of the product. So in this case, one item is one 50-liter keg. or we could set it up as 50,000 liters, or 50,000 mils, I should say. Either way would accomplish the same thing if we want to define that as one keg being one item or one keg being 50,000 mils. The important thing to keep in mind is that for each size, the number entered into the quantity field combined with the unit selected will define in the system how much stock to deduct when that particular size is sold. Another important thing that I really need to stress is that the size names, quantities, and units will be the same for all of the product stores. But per store, we can control if certain sizes will show on tills in each store. That's what this column here, show in store, what these flags control. And as I mentioned earlier, we can set different prices per store. The remaining columns after this show in store flag are all store specific to the selected store as well, by the way. The show in store flag only controls whether or not a size will be displayed on product key maps. I know we haven't mentioned product key maps yet. We'll get to that in an upcoming lesson, but the product key maps from in SmartPOS are how we can actually set up the buttons that will be used to purchase products or for operators to ring products up. So having this, if we turn off show in store for a pint, maybe we're not going to sell pints in this main restaurant, or maybe a better example is we're not going to sell kegs from the restaurant. Maybe we have a retail outlet at the venue that sells kegs, but from the main restaurant we don't. So we would turn off the flag for show in store. That size will not be able to display on the tills, but it will not prevent the product size from being sold either using a barcode or from a product search function. It will just prevent it from actually being shown on the tills. Cool, but next to that column we do have the cost price of each size, which is going to be calculated based on the product's purchase cost or its ingredients purchase cost if it's a non-stocked product, and the sizes, quantities, and units as a portion of the base size or as a portion of its ingredients. To look at it another way, the costs are extended for each size and are calculated from the size's quantity as it relates to the reordering unit's cost. And by the way, we can control which cost we are seeing in this table here by using this show cost drop down at the bottom of the tab to see either last cost, average cost, or last inwards. Alright, and then we have our price. So what are we actually selling this size for in the store? But at the moment, we are only seeing one of what are called price numbers, also known as price names. However, we can configure multiple prices at the venue level, which can then be used to offer different pricing for the same product size within the store. There's a number of reasons that within the store we might want to do that. It could be based on something like we want to have different pricing for account holders, or different prices for products that are going to be sold for takeaway or delivery rather than dine-in. So some of this will make a bit more sense as we cover more ground in other lessons. But for now, if I just save this and we head to our venue settings, on the names tab here is where we can define our price names, and we do support up to 8 different ones in total. The first one, or price number 1, is defined by default with a price name of just normal. And you'll notice that next to the price name column, we have something called item discount name. What's that, you ask? Well, if we look just to the left of this box, we have another box labeled discounts and surcharges, where we can define what are commonly referred to as the system's discount totalizers. Essentially, they are the different buckets or categories of discounts and surcharges that we might want to track and report on separately. By default, the system, you can see, is going to have a handful of these defined, but we can rename some of those if we'd like to, and we can define up to 30 of them in total. Now, how the discount totalizers then relate to the price name, or the price names, is that for each price name, if a product's price name has a different price compared with that of the normal, what we'll call the base price, this price number 1, that price difference, whether it be a discount or a surcharge, needs to report somewhere. So that price difference will report to whichever item discount name is defined for it. For example, if we add a price name here that we're going to use for account pricing, and we'll just call it accounts. So that's going to be used most likely to offer some discounted prices for products when we're selling products to account holders in the venue. So we'll then want that discount reporting to the discount totalizer, which we've got one by default called account discount. So we would want to set that as the item discount name, so that when we offer different pricing to account holders where there's a savings or a discount from the normal base price, that discount will report into that bucket. We can also optionally add a service charge to be included whenever a particular price number is being used, but we've got a whole lesson coming up soon where we'll review this whole concept in a bit more detail and chat more about discounts and surcharges. For now, we'll keep this lesson rolling. So here in venue maintenance is where we can define our price names, and then we can set different prices for those for a product. So what I'll do for now is just save this, and we will head back to our draft beer. Now, here on the store pricing settings tab, we have a second price column showing for the account price number that we just defined. So as long as we have a name defined for the price number, it will show as a column here on the price and setting on the store pricing settings tab, where we can actually set a price for that size. So we might say that a jug of our BPOS Pale Ale is going to be sold in this store at a normal price of $20, but then maybe for account holders it's going to be priced at $18. And we could have defined other price numbers as well to then have different prices, or we could have the same ones as normal prices. It really just depends on your organization and how you'd like to set those up. But for example, maybe we only offer discounted pricing to account holders for certain products and not to others. So we could leave this as $20, or we'll come to a concept called price modes in just a second where we can set that up as well. And don't forget that if we have different stores, each store could have different prices for each price number as well. So maybe in the other restaurant or in the bars, we've got different normal pricing and different account pricing for this product. Cool. But to take things a step further as we wrap up this session or this lesson, we do also have a concept called price modes, where we can set prices based on things like percentage discount amounts. To turn on price modes, I will need to save this again, head back to venue maintenance, to our flags tab, and we have a flag in the system flags section here called use price mode. So I will need to turn that on, save that, go back to our product list, back to our products and our store pricing settings tab. We now have a couple additional columns in here for setting our price modes. We've got one to set a price mode for each price name. Now would be a good time to show you that we can control what will show in this big box here, including the price numbers and price mode columns, depending on what's been chosen to display using the price number option here, if we just want to show the normal price mode, or if we want to show all, and using these flags down here like display stores or display margins or display service charge and display sub-range, all some higher level topics that some of these we'll get to throughout this course and some of them we won't. But as for the price modes themselves, we have, if I open up one of these drop downs, we have a plethora of options in here, from simply use this price to things like zero price and sort of everything in between there, just depending on how we would like to configure these. So for one example, rather than actually have a price set here, we could just have this as use the base price, and it's just going to, in that case, it will use the normal base price that's been set as the accounts price if we don't want to set a different accounts price. Cool. The last things I want to leave you with for today as we wrap up our Products 101 lesson is that it is important to be as consistent as possible when setting up the sizes of products. So all products of the same type should be set up with the sizes in the same order. For example, after configuring one draft beer like this in this database, all other draft beers should be configured as closely as possible with the same sizes. That may mean that some products will be set up with a size that isn't used at all. Maybe another beer isn't sold in jugs for whatever reason, but the rest of the size numbers will all be the same, which will come in handy when we're configuring things in the system such as product key maps and promotions, where size numbers for an entire product group or product type might be used. So there are instances where we will set a product size as the reference rather than the name. So in those instances, it is very helpful to use the same sizes, size names from one of the same sort of product to another. Anyway, that'll do it for our Product Maintenance 101 lesson, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.